to have a seat.
Thank you for inviting me to your lovely home. It's very realistic.
I'm so glad you're here, and apparently so are they.
All your friends, they're very quiet. Yeah.
Well, we saw there some bits from some very, very famous TV shows, all of them written by you.
That was a useful coincidence, wasn't it?
It was. Well, that last bit, when Sherlock Holmes plunges to his death, it gives me goosebumps. So do you feel the same, even though you have written it?
Well, no, because I know he was just faking. I always knew that, so... No, it doesn't. I mean, it makes me very nostalgic, because I remember when we watched that go out at Martin Freeman's house, and we were starting to realise just the impact it was having, the series. And me and Mark just sitting there thinking, this is going to kill them. We're going to kill people with this. We loved it. It's great.
Well, that's why you get goosebumps, I guess. Yeah. Well, did you always want to be a scriptwriter?
I really did, yes. That was very specifically what I wanted to be. I used to put on plays with my sisters. Actually, I wanted to be a playwright, a proper distinguished playwright, so that hasn't really worked out. But, yeah, it was script writing I was fascinated by. I used to love looking at scripts, and my parents had a complete set of Bernard Shaw, and I was just fascinated about looking at how scripts were laid out. So that seemed to be the most exciting thing. I also wanted to write Doctor Who, so...
So lucky you. Well, the thing is that I mean, every day you still play with your childhood heroes, Doctor Who, Sherlock Holmes. So is it, in a way, fan fiction that you're writing?
Yeah. Yes, but for money, so that's...
that's better.
Good, yeah.
That's an improvement.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Sherlock Holmes is the most adapted character in the world. There are 1,156.
Are you trying to tell me other people have been doing this?
Might come as a surprise.
I thought we invented it.
But yes. But the thing is, I mean, your episodes are based on Conan Doyle's original stories, but there's also all of these allusions and nods to cases and names and places, and you must have really close read Conan Doyle's stories. So did you discover anything about Sherlock Holmes that maybe the rest of us missed?
I don't know that... I mean, we didn't study it in order to do the shows. Just Mark and me are just huge Sherlock Holmes geeks, so we knew all that stuff. It was hardwired into our brains. We never have to look it up. I suppose now and then we'll phone each other with I found a new bit, I'm really excited. This is a clever bit. This is something you wouldn't expect. But mostly... No, mostly it was already there in our brains. We thought, in that pompous way that middle-aged writers have, that we knew it better than anybody else and that we could get it right. Now, that's that's brave talk when you're sitting on a train. It's slightly more nerve-wracking when you put it on the telly. But we sort of thought, you know, we know what this is really like, and we can sort of blow the dust off and show people how good the original is. Because that's the thing. There's so much about Doyle's original stories that's missed by everybody, forgotten by everybody. That's also
the way a fan expresses it,
yes.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So what kind of a Sherlock did you want to write?
Well, we wanted him to be younger than normal because, in fact, if you read the stories, he is young. He's referred to as a student. He's referred to as a young man throughout the initial run of the stories. And it only makes sense if he's young. So we wanted him to be younger. We wanted him to be sexy and attractive. Nevertheless, we cast Benedict Cumberbatch because we thought he was good. Because, again, it's a little-known fact, but the Strand magazine stories had a considerable female following because they liked the look of Sherlock Holmes in the illustrations, and he was this magnificent, clever man, and he looked rather handsome. Do you know why that is? There's, you know, the careers
of... Is it the Deer Stalker?
No, it's the careers of Basil Rathbone, Jeremy Brett, Benedict Cumberbatch and many others have been based on a wrongly addressed envelope in Victorian times. The guy who was publishing the Sherlock Holmes stories wanted the illustrator, Walter Paget, to illustrate the monthly instalments. But he wrote in error to his brother, Sidney Paget, who, extremely amused at the misunderstanding, to take the mickey out of his brother, drew Sherlock Holmes as his brother, Walter Paget, who, as it happened, was a rather handsome man with a big nose. Totally contradicting Doyle's own description of him, which is a much more alarming, you know, he's incredibly skinny with a huge nose and tiny little eyes. He's basically Nosferatu in the original. But because of this misaddressed envelope, all these years later, Benedict Cumberbatch gets to be in Star Trek. Who knew that could happen?
So which one of these pictures did you have when you pictured your Sherlock Holmes? Well, the Sidney Paget or the Conan Doyle one?
Very much the Sidney Paget one, because even Doyle admitted that's a better idea. Let's make the hero really quite handsome. There used to be occasions where women would write to Doyle saying, "I'd like to work as Sherlock Holmes's housekeeper." And when I was a kid, I'd wonder, why do you want to do that? Who wants to do that? I started to realise in later years maybe they had designs beyond simply tidying up.
You know, that I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. I thought we should watch a bit from the episode, The Sign of Three.
OK.
Mary, when I say you deserve this man, it is the highest compliment of which I am capable. John, you have endured war and injury and tragic loss. So sorry again about that last one. So know this, today you sit between the woman you have made your wife and the man you have saved. In short, the two people who love you most in all this world. And I know I speak for Mary as well when I say we will never let you down and we have a lifetime ahead to prove that.
Hug him, stop me.
Certainly not.
Ah, yes. Now on to some funny stories about John. What's wrong? What happened? Why are you all doing that? John?
Oh, shit.
Did I do it wrong?
No, you didn't. Come in.
I haven't finished yet.
Yeah, I know.
So this is one of the more talked about situations that you put Sherlock in, being Watson's best man.
Yes.
So where did you get that idea?
Oh, from about the age of 12, because in between stories...
You started early.
I did, yes, and I never grew up. But in between stories, Dr. Watson meets Mary in The Sign of Four, and by a scandal in Bohemia, he's married to her. And as a kid, I was just thinking, now, hang on, there's only one person, given that Dr. Watson has exactly one friend, there is only one person who could have been his best man. And I said, why can't we see that? What would Sherlock Holmes be like as a best man?
And now we know.
And now we know, yes.
Well, actually, it's a great speech. So what was it like writing it?
It's one of the very few times, possibly the only time, I've actually cried writing something. That sequence there, I was blubbing during writing. I mean, sad stuff doesn't make me cry when I write it because I know I'm being manipulative. But a simple declaration of devotion in the manner of a man who simply decided that is what you do. He's read it in a book. You state how you feel about your friend. Right, we'll do that. And he does it with forensic perfection. So it kills you when it happens. And that, I think, is tremendously powerful. It's also very key to the character of Sherlock Holmes because he has no shame in admitting that he can feel that way. When he likes people, he's perfectly happy to like them. He doesn't like very many, that's the truth.
A sociopath, so fucking not, is a quote from you about Sherlock Holmes.
Well, it's funny how people are always wanting to prove me wrong in this one, they say, but he's not a high-functioning sociopath. I never said he was. Sherlock Holmes tells people he is. Yeah. Why would you listen to him? Nobody can define themselves. That's what he'd like people to think he is. Yeah. And that's it. I mean, I think he probably longs to be one. I think he loiters around prisons for the criminally insane, envying them their emotionally detachment. He knows emotion is a problem to him. A man who has decided to suppress all his emotions in order to be better at what he does clearly has an awful lot of emotion. That's a very simple deduction. He clearly is a problem for him. So in itself, that is an emotional decision.
Well, in this scene, I mean, you make Sherlock Holmes the best man and Watson, but how far are you prepared to go? Could we see Sherlock having a facial, going to shop for groceries or picking up Watson's kids from daycare?
Well, you know, because one of the things you really have to get your head around in writing it, especially in the modern day, he's a real person, he's a man. If he had to pick up Watson's kids in the event Watson never had any kids, who knows what will happen, he'd do it. If Watson asked him to, of course he'd do it. People do things like that. He has to function in the real world. Would he have a facial? That's a question. Me and Benedict have some. I mean, Benedict would, let's be clear, more or less continuously. But we had a discussion about how vain is he really? All the great Sherlock Holmeses, including Benedict, are always impeccably dressed, always beautifully turned out. I doubt if Sherlock Holmes ever started dating a woman that she'd ever see a mirror, because he'd be too busy adjusting his hair. It's the thing that Benedict started doing in character is every time there's a mirror, he just goes, still cool. You know, I find no women attractive, but they better fancy me. And we discussed how much that is just his need to be the alpha male in the room and to take command and therefore to look good, or is there a real moment of vanity? He wears expensive shirts, he wears good suits, and Benedict's not the only Sherlock Holmes that does that. They're all well turned out.
Well, I think I always read him as very vain, and I think it's because he's impeccable in everything else he does.
He would dress well because everything that is worth doing at all, as far as Sherlock Holmes is concerned, is worth doing extremely well. Even when Watson finds him hiding out in Dartmoor in the original stories, he's impeccably dressed on Dartmoor, you know, having been living rough in a hut.
As you are.
Yes. So.
Well, actually, I thought that Conan Doyle went a bit overboard when he made him a beekeeper in Sussex.
It's what's really going on with the end of that story. I keep trying to worry about that. He spends ages in all those stories saying the London criminal classes are not interesting enough for me to keep me distracted, and then he decides to go and look after bees.
I know.
What really happened? I mean, and was she nice? Why did he suddenly retire to the Sussex Downs? And it's never really mentioned what he's doing there.
No.
It's weird.
Well, you modernised Sherlock, but you kept the core of him. He's very recognisable for us Sherlock fans. But the things you did with Dr. Watson, I have to say thank you. That man was in desperate need of a makeover to be saved from boredom. And I was wondering, was it easier to reinvent Watson than Sherlock?
Well, see, Watson presents a real problem to the adapter. I think anyone who's tackled Sherlock Holmes has a huge problem with Dr. Watson. Because in the stories, in fact, he's sort of the main character, because he's the one telling the story, and we see everything through his eyes, even though he frequently doesn't do very much, except make Sherlock Holmes bearable to us. We see Sherlock Holmes always through the eyes of someone who adores him. Therefore, we forgive him.
Well, Dr. Watson actually is the original Sherlock Holmes fan, right?
Yes, he is. He's the #1 fanboy, and he is writing, according to Sherlock Holmes, an awful lot of fan fiction for the Strand magazine.
Yeah. Well, Sherlock Holmes has loads of fans, and so does Doctor Who, that you also write. Yes, I hear you.
Right.
And those fans are very active. I mean, they comment on every second of every episode of everything that you do.
Usually during it, so they miss the really good bits. Yeah.
So what's it like writing with these millions of viewers hanging over your shoulder?
I mean, it's a reasonable question, but the truth is you never really kind of think about that while you're writing a show or making a show. I mean, all I'm ever thinking about, as I am thinking about right now, is will I make it to the end of the script and will it make any sense? I will make it to the end. No, it won't make any sense, is the general answer. But that's all I'm thinking about then. And then when we're making the show, it's just an ongoing state of crisis because we don't have enough time or enough money. So all we're thinking about is will we get it made? And then at the last minute, once you've assembled the whole show, you suddenly remember, millions upon millions upon millions of people are going to watch it. And then you have a sort of rush of fear. You think, oh, my God, maybe they'll hate it. Maybe they won't agree with us that it is the best thing ever made. And I have this, me and Mark are always sitting there saying, let's not show it. It's only going to spoil it. We've had a really lovely time with some nice people. Let's not put it on television. People might disagree with us. We don't want that. I remember particularly my biggest moment of fear was in early 2010, when I suddenly realised that Doctor Who, with Matt Smith, my first series as showrunner, was about to go on. And shortly after that, Sherlock Holmes with Benedict Cumberbatch was about to go on, both unknown quantities at the time. And I was thinking, if I just now shoot Daniel Craig in the face, I've screwed up all of British culture in one go, in 1 year. It's done.
Actually, the TV producer Sue Virtue, who also happens to be your wife.
Yes.
She said that when you were working on a plot, you were walking around the streets, talking to yourself, making faces.
Yes.
So do you still do that?
Yes. Fortunately, people now mostly know what I do for a living, so it's kind of okay. But for a long time, people just thought I was a lunatic. Also, because like most writers, I'm really, really scruffily dressed during the day. In my, tracksuits and scuzzy old T-shirt, and I wander out for a coffee, muttering to myself. It's kind of, you look like a genial idiot if you're writing a nice sitcom. You're just going, that's kind of all right. But if you're doing Doctor Who, it's all, no, Doctor! The shadows shall rise again!
Well, apparently it's working very well. So you went into movies for a very short while. You were working on Tintin, and then you suddenly just dumped Steven Spielberg and Hollywood and went back to BBC to do television.
See, I've done my career the wrong way around. I knew I was doing something bad. Yeah.
So why is that?
Well, I was working on Tintin, and I have to say, having a lovely time, because Steven Spielberg is as nice as his reputation. He's an absolutely lovely man, as is Peter Jackson, Kathy Kennedy, all delightful. Most of my early experiences have been horrific. They were just lovely people. So I'm the villain in this scenario. I get offered Doctor Who, and I'm meant to be doing 2 more Tintin films. And I just have to say, look, I'm gonna have to run away from LA to Cardiff. A line they hadn't heard before.
That's something you don't usually hear, no.
It's not the usual career path, no. Have you been to Cardiff? No, it's... Steven Spielberg, I call him Steven, yeah.
You get to do that when you worked on Tintin with him. So
he's a tremendously relaxed man. He phoned the house to, and I thought, this is unique. He phoned me up to accept my resignation. I thought, yeah, other people wait for him to phone up and offer you a job. I wait for him to phone up so I can resign. And what he said was, I loved him for saying this. He said, the world is a better place with Doctor Who, so you must go and do that. So I was, okay. Yeah.
He was right.
Do you know, by the sound of this, they should actually put Doctor Who on in Sweden. I think how much more popular it would be if it was available on television.
It is on, actually, but not on a channel that everybody has.
That is an offence.
Yes, it is. But do you think that actually TV is the best way to tell a story, except for books? Of course.
I think every way is a great way to tell a story. Seriously, I don't think there are. I think stories are always kind of the same, whether they're in books or movies or theatre or someone telling you a great joke in a pub. Stories are just great. The means by which you absorb them varies, but the joy of a great story is always the same.
And with those words, thank you so much, Steven Moffat. Ja, nu ska vi lägga manusbunten åt sidan en liten stund. För det är hög tid för Jan Guillou att sätta ett notpapper i skrivmaskinen och författa en revolutionerande text till Benny Anderssons Babel-melodi.